Today's lesson will be on habitual cues. Cues are triggers or stimuli that actually prompt us to initiate a specific habitual behavior. Cues act as signals that prompt us to engage in a routine or automatic response, and usually we do this without any conscious awareness. In the context of habit formation, our cues are an integral part of the actual habit loop. And again, the habit loop consists of three stages, and those are the cue, the routine, and the reward. The cue or the trigger will initiate our habitual behavior, and this again prompts us to actually do some action or behavior. And once we have completed that behavior or engaged in it, then we are given a reward of some sort that we at least perceive as a reward or initially did. And this reinforces the connection between the cue or trigger and our actual behavior. Now, over time, through repeated exposure to the cue and reinforcements, the reward becomes less important. We just simply do the behavior based on the cue. Again, at this point, it has become ingrained or automatic. Now, understanding habitual cues is essential in behavioral analysis of our habits, as they help us to identify or modify any kind of triggers that we may have that are influencing our maybe development of behaviors, or if we want to modify a behavior, or if we want to quit a behavior. So it involves recognizing the environment or the emotion or perhaps a situational factor that acts as a cue, and this ultimately helps us shape our automatic responses and behaviors based on recognizing or even using these cues or establishing these cues. In regards to establishing a desired new behavior or habit, there was a study done by Lally and colleagues in 2011. It was a qualitative study, and three themes emerged, and these included first, in order to create a new behavior, we're going to need to change a current behavior. Then we need to develop automaticity, and then finally we need to establish and insert a cue. So relating to the initiation of a new behavior, we need to first have confidence in our ability to initiate this new behavior. So we're going to need intrinsic commitment and confidence, and this is going to allow us to actually implement a new behavior, something we haven't tried before, but we need to have the confidence that we can be successful with this new behavior. And this particular research showed that initially new behaviors were very effortful, and they required a significant amount of planning and mental engagement, at least initially. And this doesn't come as a surprise. This makes sense. As we start a new behavior, we're going to have to think about it. However, again, the awareness of the new behavior does allow for identification of patterns, and this can assist us in our strategic insertion of our new behavior into our current daily routines, as well as establish cues and behaviors that we think are going to work with what we're already doing. Just need some small adjustments. This research also showed that positive initial experiences with our new behaviors was crucial for developing the automaticity of the new behavior. Repeated actions progressively reduce the mental workload or effort that's necessary, making our new behavior more familiar and easier to repeat. Now, over time, the behavior transitions from a new behavior or new routine to a more normal one that we don't have to really think much about. So for example, with the frequency of repetition and over a certain amount of time of that repetition, this study revealed that the new behavior can actually feel more normal than if we didn't do the behavior. So in other words, the behavior has become so automatic that it doesn't feel like a new behavior at all. It feels like the normal routine in our day. Now that we have our new behavior planned out, we're excited about it, we're confident in it, the next step is to establish our actual cue that helps us to know when to initiate this behavior, and one that helps us to initiate the behavior very frequently. So in the study done by Lally and colleagues in 2011, again, it was a qualitative study, and so the participants noticed and they reported that the cues that they found most effective were workday cues. And this allowed for stability and predictability, which again is very important for cue development as it's, again, very visible and easy to identify and very likely to be encountered. But there was a trade-off, and this was that during weekends or holidays or vacations, there was variation. And again, the participants noticed that they would have trouble initiating their new desired behavior, and they would revert back to old behaviors again when the environment or the goal structure changed. So it's very important to realize, or at least to consider, that cues with a broad range of exposure, such as waking up, going to bed, or eating a meal, provided a better, more usefulness or utility to the desired behavioral action. So it's a better cue if it's more broad based, such as again waking up or having lunch or something that we would do even on vacation. As we wrap up our lesson on habitual cues, there's a few takeaways we want to consider. First of all, when it comes to modifying a behavior or developing a new behavior or even quitting an old behavior that we want to completely stop, identifying the cues is very, very critical. So again, with all these modifications or development or cessation of behaviors, just remember that cue is the key. So if we can identify what it is that's causing the behavior to be triggered, we can use that to our advantage. Secondly, it's very important to remember that any new behavior needs to be intrinsically important to us. So we can't have it suggested to us by someone else, or we read about it or see it and we think, hey, that's an interesting idea. If we don't like it, if it's not going to work for our context or our situation, that's certainly a red flag. So it needs to be important to us. And then, of course, it also needs to be somewhat enjoyable to us. We want to not feel aversive when we encounter that behavior. So if we dislike it, that is definitely going to be a very difficult behavior to create as a habit. So it may be a little bit uphill initially, but we can't hate it. It needs to be something that has some sort of enjoyability factor. And then finally, we need to, when we're developing cues, we need to realize that the trigger that we're trying to implement or incorporate into our daily routine needs to be very broad. So it needs to be something that we're going to see on a daily basis, regardless of if it's a bit of a different context. So again, the work week looks one way, weekends look different, vacations look different, and that's a real problem for habits, especially if we're trying to develop good behaviors. We need to realize that and look for cues that will transcend a lot of different situations. Again, work week, weekend, and vacations, in order to make sure that we're triggering that positive behavior consistently throughout all 7 days and 365 days a year. So, and of course, if that's not quite doable, you just need to recognize that in these very specific, unique situations, I'm not going to encounter my cue. Be aware of that and implement some other kind of implementation intention. All right, that concludes our lesson as far as takeaways go. We're going to incorporate our lesson for SMART goals into inserting a cue or trigger that you believe or you're very confident will create a good environment for that behavior initiation. So that is our action for this week, to establish a cue with your SMART goal. So hope you enjoyed this week's lesson. And remember, we're forging your future one habit at a time. Have a great